He came home expecting the worst. Instead, he heard something from the dining room he'd never heard before. Silence. When he walked in, his 4 sons were sitting together, hands folded, about to eat. He froze. In 3 years, he'd never seen anything like this. Vincent Huffman had everything except the one thing that mattered: peace in his own home. 43 years old, billionaire, built a fortune flipping distressed properties in Austin and Charlotte, turned it into a tech logistics empire near Dallas. But he couldn't manage 4 little boys. 3 years ago, his wife left. Just walked out, left a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore." 4 sons, no mother, and a father drowning in grief he didn't know how to fix. Jerry, Noah, Albert, Henry. 6 years old now, angry, broken, fighting everyone who came near them. 31 nannies in 11 months. 31 trained professionals. Every single one quit. The boys would lock doors, shatter dishes, set off alarms, scream for hours, destroy whatever they could reach. They weren't bad kids. They were hurt kids. And hurt kids hurt people. The house was a battlefield. No joy, no laughter, just pain living in every corner. Then one day, a woman showed up. Hannah Pendleton, 34, a maid with no training, no experience with children, just a reference letter from a parish kitchen in Charleston, South Carolina, and a quiet steadiness that looked unbreakable. Vincent didn't want to hire her. But something made him say yes. 3 days, he told her. She smiled. 3 days. The boys tested her hard, but she didn't break, didn't run, just stayed. And on day 3, something happened that changed everything. Vincent came home early. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then he heard voices, soft, coming from the dining room. He walked toward the sound, heart pounding, and what he saw when he stepped through that door, he'd remember it for the rest of his life. But before I show you what happened in that room, subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. This story will remind you that sometimes the most powerful transformations don't come from credentials or money. They come from someone who refuses to give up on broken hearts. Now, let me take you inside that dining room. The morning started the way every morning started in the Huffman house. With something breaking. Vincent heard the crash from upstairs. Glass. Something expensive, probably one of the lamps in the west hallway. He didn't even get out of bed to check anymore. What was the point? 6:30 in the morning and the war had already begun. He lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to his sons' voices rising. Jerry giving orders, Noah's angry shout, Albert's footsteps running across hardwood, Henry starting to whimper, which meant the meltdown would come soon. This used to be the time his wife would bring coffee. She'd hum while she poured it, kiss his forehead, say something that made the day feel possible. That was another life. Vincent finally got up, got dressed, went downstairs. The kitchen looked like a hurricane had passed through. Cereal scattered across the marble counter. Juice spilled on the floor. 4 bowls abandoned wherever they'd been dropped. The nanny, what was her name, Rochelle, was already gone. Her resignation letter sat on the kitchen island next to the house keys she'd left behind. "Mr. Huffman, I'm sorry. I tried, I really did, but I can't do this anymore. Your sons need more help than I can provide. Please don't contact me." 31. That made 31. Vincent folded the letter and put it in the drawer with the others. A drawer full of failure. A drawer full of people who'd looked at his sons and decided they weren't worth the trouble. He couldn't even be angry anymore. Just tired. So deeply, endlessly tired. The boys were in the living room. Jerry sat on the leather couch like a little general, arms crossed, watching Vincent with calculating eyes. Noah was pacing, restless energy, looking for something to destroy. Albert had already disappeared somewhere, probably behind the bookshelf in the study or under the stairs. And Henry sat in the corner, rocking slightly, that look on his face that meant he was about to lose it completely. "She's gone, isn't she?" Jerry said. Not a question, a statement. Vincent nodded. "Good," Jerry said coldly. "She was mean anyway. She wasn't mean, Jerry. You put a spider in her bag. It was just a spider. It was still alive. Jerry shrugged. No remorse. No guilt. Just that blank look that scared Vincent more than the anger did. This was what his sons had become. 4 little boys who'd learned that if you hurt people first, they can't hurt you when they leave. Vincent's phone buzzed. A meeting in 40 minutes. Another conference call. Another day of pretending he had his life together while everything at home fell apart. He looked at his sons. Really looked at them. Jerry, 6 years old, with his mother's sharp intelligence and a heart that had frozen shut. Noah, with Vincent's temper and no one to teach him how to control it. Albert, who'd rather hide than be seen because being seen meant being left eventually. And Henry, the quietest, who cried because he didn't have words for the pain yet. They were so small, so broken, and he didn't know how to fix them. I have to go to work, Vincent said quietly. You always have to go to work, Noah shot back. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't do anything. Vincent felt that one hit because Noah was right. Sorry didn't bring their mother back. Sorry didn't make the house feel like a home. Sorry didn't teach 4 boys how to be loved. He left them there and drove to his office in Stamford, made his calls, signed his contracts, played the part of the man who had everything figured out. But the whole time all he could think about was that drawer full of resignation letters. 31 women who couldn't handle his sons. 31 chances at hope that had died. By the time he got home that evening, his estate manager Grayson was waiting for him in the foyer. The man looked older than he had that morning. Sir, we need to talk. Vincent already knew. She's not coming back. No, sir. She left while you were gone. Didn't even collect her final paycheck. Just left. Of course she did. The placement service called. Grayson continued carefully. They have one more person, but she's unconventional. Vincent almost laughed. Unconventional. That was a polite way of saying desperate. What's wrong with her? Nothing's wrong, sir. She's just not what we usually hire. She's been working as a maid for years. No childcare training. She heard about your situation through a church contact in South Carolina and said she felt she should come. Should come. Like it was destiny or fate or some cosmic assignment. Vincent closed his eyes. He was so tired of hoping. So tired of trying. So tired of watching his sons destroy every person who walked through that door. But what choice did he have? Send her. Sir, are you sure? She's really not qualified. Send her, Grayson. What's one more? That night, Vincent stood in his bedroom looking at an old photograph. Him and his wife on their anniversary trip to Napa Valley. Her smile so bright it hurt to look at, his arm around her shoulders, both of them believing in forever. He didn't know when forever had become just 3 years. Downstairs, he could hear the boys still awake, still moving, still fighting whatever invisible enemy lived inside them. Tomorrow, another stranger would walk through that door. Another person who would look at his sons and eventually decide they were too much. Vincent set the photo down and got ready for bed. He didn't pray anymore. Hadn't in a long time. But that night, staring at the dark ceiling, he whispered something that felt close. Please, if anyone's listening, please. I don't know what else to do. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. And somewhere in South Carolina, a woman named Hannah Pendleton was packing her worn leather suitcase, checking her bus ticket one more time, and getting ready to walk into a storm she'd been preparing for her whole life. Wednesday morning came gray and cold. Vincent remembered them all, every single one. Their names lined up in his mind like a roll call of defeat. Nanny number 7, Beverly Trask, lasted 4 days. The boys locked her in the upstairs bathroom during a thunderstorm. By the time the housekeeper found her 3 hours later, she was hyperventilating, mascara streaked down her face, whispering that she couldn't do this, she just couldn't. Nanny number 14, Pauline Vickers, made it 2 weeks. The boys told Vincent she'd stolen jewelry from his bedroom. He believed them at first, called the police, searched her bags. Found nothing. Later, Jerry admitted they made it up because she wouldn't let them have dessert before dinner. Pauline left without collecting her final paycheck, without looking Vincent in the eye, just walked out the service door like she was escaping prison. Nanny number 23, Darlene Cho, didn't even make it through orientation. She arrived on a Monday morning, met the boys in the playroom, and by noon her car was gone from the driveway. No resignation, no phone call, just gone. Grayson found her ID badge on the front steps. Vincent kept a list in his desk drawer. 31 names. 31 people who'd tried and failed to reach his sons. Some lasted weeks. Some lasted days. One lasted 90 minutes. He knew what people thought. That he was outsourcing love. That you couldn't hire someone to fix what a father should fix himself. And they were right. He was trying to buy healing the same way he bought everything else. Write a check. Delegate the problem. Move on to the next deal. But every time he tried to be present, really present, his sons looked at him like he was a stranger. Because he was. He'd spent 3 years hiding in boardrooms and hotel suites, convincing himself that providing for them financially was the same as providing for them emotionally. It wasn't, and now the distance between them felt impossible to cross. The mansion didn't help. It was beautiful, of course. 12,000 square feet of imported marble, custom millwork, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking wooded acreage. A showpiece, but it felt like a museum. Sterile, lifeless, rooms that nobody used, furniture nobody sat on, art nobody looked at. The staff moved through the house like ghosts. Quiet, careful, they worked in shifts, rotating duties so no one had to deal with the boys for too long. The chef, Warren Tisdale, prepared meals that went mostly uneaten. The groundskeeper, Bud Kellerman, stayed outside as much as possible. The housekeepers, 2 women named Ingrid and Corinne, cleaned around the boys like they were landmines. Nobody wanted to be there. They stayed because Vincent paid well, because jobs like this were hard to find. But not because they cared. How could they? Caring required connection, and connection in this house was dangerous. The boys made sure of that. Vincent understood it now, even if he hadn't at first. The cruelty wasn't random. It was protective. The boys had learned that everyone leaves eventually. Their mother left. The nannies left. Even Vincent left every morning, choosing his office over them. So the boys hurt people first. Pushed them away before they could be abandoned again. It was grief disguised as misbehavior. Pain wearing the mask of destruction. But understanding it didn't mean Vincent knew how to fix it. So he worked 16-hour days, meetings in Houston, conference calls with investors in Denver, site visits to projects in Phoenix. His wealth had become a shield. As long as he was building something, acquiring something, closing another deal, he didn't have to face what was falling apart at home. His assistant, Ramona, had started booking his travel without asking. She knew. Everyone knew. Vincent Huffman, the man who could negotiate billion-dollar contracts, couldn't spend an evening with his own children. It was Wednesday afternoon when Grayson found him in the study. Vincent was reviewing contracts for a new development in Charlotte, numbers blurring together on the page. "Sir," the placement service called. Vincent didn't look up. "And? They have one more candidate." Vincent set his pen down. One more person willing to walk into this disaster. How desperate is she? Grayson hesitated. "She's not from an agency, sir. She's a referral, private contact." "What does that mean?" "It means she doesn't have the usual credentials. No formal training. No references from previous families. She's been working as a maid, mostly in the South. Heard about your situation and reached out directly." Vincent leaned back in his chair. A maid, with no experience, applying to manage 4 traumatized boys in a house that had chewed up and spit out 31 professionals. Where's she from? Charleston, South Carolina. Well, outside Charleston. Small town. She's willing to travel north. Vincent almost laughed. This was what it had come to. Scraping the bottom of every possible barrel, hoping someone, anyone, would take a chance on his sons. "What's her name?" "Hannah Pendleton." Vincent closed his eyes. He was so tired. Tired of interviews. Tired of hope. Tired of watching people realize his boys were too broken to save. But what choice did he have? Send her, he said quietly. Grayson nodded and turned to leave. Grayson. Yes, sir? Don't tell the boys. Not yet. Understood, sir. The door closed. Vincent sat alone in the study, surrounded by contracts and files and all the evidence of a life built on control. But he couldn't control this. Couldn't fix it with money or strategy or sheer force of will. He looked out the window at the empty driveway, the manicured lawn, the stone gate that kept the world out and his sons trapped inside. One more chance. That's all this was. One more person who would look at his family and eventually walk away. Vincent didn't believe in miracles anymore. But he was running out of options. Hannah Pendleton arrived on Thursday afternoon in a taxi from the train station. She stepped out carrying a single worn leather suitcase, the kind that looked like it had traveled through decades, not just states. She was 34 but moved with the steady calm of someone much older. No hurry, no hesitation, just quiet purpose. Grayson met her at the service entrance. Most candidates came through the front door, eager to be impressed by the marble foyer and the chandelier that cost more than a car. Hannah didn't ask to see the front. She followed Grayson through the kitchen, past Warren who was prepping dinner, past Ingrid who paused mid-fold to watch this new stranger walk by. Grayson led her to Vincent's study. Vincent stood when she entered, extending his hand. Ms. Pendleton. Hannah shook it once, gently. Mr. Huffman. Thank you for seeing me. Her voice was soft, not timid, just measured. Like she understood that volume didn't equal strength. Please, sit. Hannah sat in the chair across from his desk, suitcase resting at her feet. She didn't fidget, didn't look around the room cataloging wealth. She just waited. Vincent glanced at the file Grayson had left on his desk. There wasn't much in it. No formal resume, no list of previous families. Just a single reference letter from a parish kitchen in Charleston and a note that said she'd worked in housekeeping for 12 years. I'll be honest with you, Ms. Pendleton. I'm not sure why you're here. You don't have childcare experience. You've never worked with traumatized children. My sons have run off 31 trained professionals in less than a year. What makes you think you can handle them? Hannah didn't flinch. I don't think I can handle them, she said quietly. I think I can sit with them. Vincent frowned. Sit with them? Yes, sir. Most people try to control hurting children. I just want to be present with them. Vincent sat back. That sounded like something from a parenting book. Idealistic, impractical, but there was something in the way she said it that didn't feel rehearsed. I can offer you 3 days, Hannah said before he could respond. No payment up front. If I fail, I'll leave quietly. No drama, no demands. 3 days, Vincent repeated. Yes, sir. That should be enough time to know if this will work. Vincent studied her. She wasn't selling herself, wasn't listing credentials or making promises. She was simply offering time. He'd hired people with pages of references who'd quit in hours. What did he have to lose? All right, he said finally. 3 days. Grayson will show you to your quarters. The boys are in the playroom. I'll introduce you. Hannah nodded. Thank you, sir. They walked through the hallway together, past walls lined with framed photographs. School pictures of the boys at different ages. Professional portraits. Candid shots from better times. Hannah's eyes moved across them slowly, lingering on each face, but she didn't say anything. Didn't comment on how sad they looked or how much they'd change. She just noticed. The playroom was at the end of the east wing. Vincent opened the door and immediately regretted it. The room was destroyed, toys scattered everywhere, books ripped, a lamp knocked over, and in the center of it all, his 4 sons. Jerry stood near the window, arms crossed, watching. Noah was throwing blocks at the wall. Albert crouched behind the overturned couch. Henry sat in the corner, rocking, hands over his ears. Boys, Vincent said, his voice tight. This is Ms. Pendleton. She'll be staying with us for a few days. Jerry's eyes locked on Hannah. Where's Rochelle? She's not coming back. Good, Jerry said. She was boring anyway. Noah threw another block. It hit the wall inches from Hannah's head. She didn't flinch. Noah, Vincent snapped. That's enough. But Noah wasn't listening. He picked up another block, this time aiming directly at Hannah. Vincent moved to step between them, but Hannah raised her hand gently. It's all right, Mr. Huffman. Vincent hesitated, then stepped back. Noah threw the block. It bounced off Hannah's shoulder. She didn't react, didn't scold, didn't even look upset. She just stood there, calm, present. The boys stared at her, waiting for the reaction they always got. Anger, tears, threats to leave, but Hannah didn't give them any of it. Instead, she walked slowly to the center of the room, moved a few toys aside, and sat down on the floor. Right there in the middle of the chaos. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. The boys didn't know what to do. This wasn't how adults behaved. Adults yelled or cried or walked out. They didn't just sit. Jerry stepped closer. What are you doing? Hannah looked up at him. Waiting. For what? For you to invite me in. Jerry's expression shifted. Confusion. Suspicion. He glanced at his brothers, then back at Hannah. We didn't invite you. I know, Hannah said softly. That's why I'm waiting. Vincent stood in the doorway, watching. This woman had been in the house for 10 minutes and she was already doing something no one else had tried. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to listen. He cleared his throat. I'll leave you to it, he said, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to Hannah or the boys. Hannah didn't turn around. Thank you, Mr. Huffman. Vincent closed the door behind him and walked back to his study. He sat down at his desk, staring at the contracts he'd been reviewing earlier, but the numbers didn't make sense anymore. His mind was in that playroom, with 4 broken boys and a woman who thought sitting on the floor was enough. He didn't believe it would work, but for the first time in months, he wanted to be wrong. It happened on the second day. Hannah had spent Thursday evenings sitting on that playroom floor until the boys finally went to bed. She didn't force conversation, didn't demand cooperation. She just existed in their space until they got tired of testing her. Friday morning started quietly. Hannah woke early, made her bed in the small staff quarters on the 3rd floor, and came downstairs carrying a woven basket she'd brought from Charleston. It was the only personal item she'd unpacked. Inside were a few folded papers, some photographs, and a church program with worn edges. She set it on the kitchen counter while she helped Warren prepare breakfast. The boys came down one by one. Jerry first, suspicious as always. Noah second, still looking for a fight. Albert trailing behind, watching everything. Henry last, silent. They ate without incident. No thrown food, no shouting. Just tense silence. Hannah cleared the plates when they finished and asked if they wanted to help her fold laundry. Jerry said no. The others followed his lead. Hannah nodded and went to the laundry room alone. That's when it happened. Jerry found the basket first. He'd gone back to the kitchen for water and saw it sitting there, unguarded. He lifted the lid carefully, like he was opening something dangerous. Inside, he found the photographs. Black and white images of a young man in military uniform. A woman who looked like Hannah standing next to him. A family gathered on church steps. Jerry pulled them out, studied them, then called his brothers. Noah arrived first. What is it? Her stuff, Jerry said. Noah grabbed one of the photos. Who's this? I don't know. Jerry looked at the church program. It was a funeral service. The name at the top read Corporal Raymond Pendleton. Albert appeared in the doorway. What are you doing? Jerry didn't answer. He was already tearing the first photo. Not violently, methodically, like he was testing to see if he could. The paper ripped clean down the middle. Noah tore another one, then another. Albert watched, frozen. Henry stood behind him, eyes wide, hands starting to shake. Within minutes, the basket was empty. Photos shredded, church program crumpled. Everything Hannah had brought from home scattered across the kitchen floor like evidence of a crime. Jerry stood over the wreckage, breathing hard. His face wasn't triumphant. It was hollow, like he'd just done something he couldn't take back and didn't know why he'd started. Ingrid walked in to refill her cleaning supplies and froze. "Oh no. Oh boys, what did you do?" The boys scattered. Jerry ran upstairs. Noah disappeared into the den. Albert and Henry fled to opposite ends of the house. Ingrid knelt down, trying to gather the pieces, her hands shaking. Hannah appeared in the doorway moments later, laundry basket balanced on her hip. She saw Ingrid on the floor, saw the torn photographs, saw the crumpled program with her brother's name barely visible through the wrinkles. She set the laundry down slowly, walked to the counter, picked up one half of a photograph. Her brother's face, torn right through the center. Ingrid stood quickly. "Ms. Pendleton, I'm so sorry. I'll find them. I'll make them apologize." Hannah didn't respond. She knelt down and began gathering the pieces. Her hands moved carefully, like she was collecting something sacred. Ingrid hesitated, then quietly left the room. Hannah carried the fragments upstairs. She didn't go to the boys' rooms. Didn't search for them. She walked to the hallway outside their bedrooms and sat down on the carpet, back against the wall. And then, for the first time since she'd arrived, she cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that came from somewhere deep and old. She held the torn pieces of her brother's face in her hands and let herself break. Jerry heard it first. He was hiding in his room, door cracked, listening. He'd expected yelling. Expected her to storm in and demand he leave. Expected her to pack her suitcase and disappear like everyone else. But she wasn't yelling. She was crying. And somehow that was worse. He stepped into the hallway. Saw her sitting there, shoulders shaking, pieces of paper in her lap. Noah appeared from the opposite end. Then Albert. Then Henry, moving slowly, terrified. They stood in a half circle, staring at this woman they'd tried so hard to destroy. And she wasn't running. She was staying. Even now, even broken. Jerry's voice came out small. "We didn't mean to." Hannah looked up. Her eyes were red, her face wet, but her expression wasn't angry. It was sad. Deeply, achingly sad. "Yes, you did," she said softly. Jerry's throat tightened. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because she was right. Hannah wiped her face with the back of her hand. "You break things because you're afraid everything leaves before you can stop it." The words hung in the air. Heavy, true, undeniable. Noah sank to the floor first. Then Albert. Then Henry. Jerry stayed standing, but his hands were shaking. Hannah looked at each of them. "My brother died," she said quietly. "He didn't leave me. He didn't choose to go. But he's gone. And breaking his picture doesn't bring him back. It just makes the hurt bigger." Henry started crying. Real sobs. The kind he'd been holding in for years. Albert put his arm around him. Noah stared at the carpet, jaw clenched. Jerry stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Hannah gathered the torn pieces and held them against her chest. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "Not because you haven't hurt me. But because I know what it's like to lose someone. And I'm not going to let you lose anyone else." The hallway absorbed that sentence like a confession. Like a truth the house had been waiting to hear for 3 years. Downstairs, Vincent stood at the bottom of the staircase, listening. He'd heard the crying, heard the silence that followed, heard words he didn't think anyone in this house knew how to say anymore. And for the first time since his wife left, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, hope wasn't dead after all. After the hallway, something shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight, but slowly, like ice beginning to thaw. Hannah didn't punish them for destroying her things. She didn't lecture or threaten or withdraw. She simply continued. Saturday morning, she asked if anyone wanted to help her make pancakes. No one answered at first. Then Henry stood up from the corner where he'd been sitting and walked to the kitchen. The others followed. Hannah showed them how to measure flour, how to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl, how to wait for bubbles before flipping. She didn't rush them, didn't correct every mistake. When Noah spilled milk on the counter, she just handed him a towel and said, "Happens to everyone." They ate together at the kitchen island, not the formal dining room. The pancakes were uneven, some burned, some undercooked. But the boys ate them anyway. And for 20 minutes, there was no yelling. No breaking. Just the sound of forks on plates and breathing. That afternoon, Hannah asked them to help fold laundry. Jerry protested. "That's boring." Hannah nodded. "It is. But it needs doing." She sat on the floor in the laundry room and started folding towels. Slowly, methodically. Albert wandered in first, curious. He picked up a washcloth and tried to copy her movements. Hannah smiled. "Good. Now fold it in half again." Noah appeared next. He didn't fold anything, just watched. Then he picked up a towel and folded it wrong on purpose. Hannah didn't react, just refolded it and handed it back. "Try again." By the end of the hour, all 4 boys were sitting on the floor, folding. Not perfectly, not quickly, but together. Sunday, Hannah introduced breathing. She called it getting quiet. She sat with them in the playroom and showed them how to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. At first, Noah mocked it. "This is stupid." Hannah didn't argue. "You don't have to do it. But I'm going to." She closed her eyes and breathed. Long, slow breaths. After a minute, Henry copied her. Then Albert. Then, reluctantly, Jerry. Even Noah eventually stopped mocking and just sat still. When they opened their eyes, the room felt different. Calmer. Like something loud had been turned down. Hannah never punished them. No timeouts. No taking away privileges. No yelling. When they broke something, she helped them clean it up. When they fought, she sat between them and asked what hurt. When they refused to listen, she waited until they were ready. Structure replaced control. Wake up, eat together, do small chores, play quietly, eat again, get quiet, sleep. Routine became safety, and safety became the thing they'd been starving for. Jerry changed first. On Monday morning, he asked Hannah a question instead of issuing a command. "Why do we fold napkins?" Hannah looked up from the table she was setting. "Because it shows care. Someone took time to make this nice for you." Jerry thought about that. Then he picked up a napkin and tried to fold it himself. It was crooked, but he didn't throw it. He just tried again. Noah's transformation was slower. He still threw things, but less often. And when he did, he started apologizing. Not right away, but later, quietly. "Sorry I broke that." Hannah never made a big deal out of it. Just said, "I forgive you. Let's fix it together." Albert started watching Hannah's hands. The way she moved, gentle, intentional, never rushed. He began copying her, placing dishes carefully instead of dropping them, closing doors softly instead of slamming them. He didn't speak much, but his actions softened. And Henry, the quietest, spoke his first word in weeks. It happened on Tuesday evening. Hannah was reading to them before bed, something she'd started doing without asking permission. She finished a page and closed the book. Henry looked up at her and whispered, "More." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Okay, sweetheart, more." Vincent watched all of this from a distance. He came home earlier now, not because he wanted to interfere, but because he couldn't stay away. He'd stand in doorways, listening to Hannah's voice in the kitchen. Watching the boys carry plates to the table. Seeing them sit quietly during meals instead of fighting. But he didn't trust it. Couldn't let himself believe it was real. He'd seen them behave before, briefly, only to explode worse later. This felt like a temporary truce. A calm before another storm. He said as much to Grayson on Wednesday evening. They were standing in the study, watching through the window as Hannah walked the boys through the garden, pointing at flowers, letting them touch leaves. "It won't last," Vincent said quietly. "It never does." Grayson didn't respond right away. Then he said, with respect, "Sir, maybe it didn't last because no one stayed long enough to see it through." Vincent wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because Grayson was right. Every nanny had given up. Every caregiver had walked away. But Hannah wasn't walking. She was staying. Even when it hurt. Even when the boys tested her. Even when hope seemed impossible. That night, Vincent walked past the playroom and stopped. The door was open. Inside, Hannah sat on the floor with all 4 boys around her. They weren't fighting. Weren't destroying. They were just sitting. Breathing. Getting quiet. The house felt different. Lighter. Like something heavy had been lifted. Just slightly. Just enough to let air back in. Vincent stood there for a long time, watching. And for the first time in 3 years, he let himself feel something he thought was gone forever. Hope. It started on Thursday evening. The 3rd day. Hannah's final day, technically, though no one had mentioned her leaving. Vincent was still in the city, caught in back-to-back meetings that ran late. The house felt quieter without him. Calmer, maybe. Hannah had spent the afternoon helping the boys organize the playroom. Not forcing them to clean, just working alongside them. Putting books back on shelves. Gathering scattered toys. Creating order from chaos. By 5:30, the room looked like a place where children actually lived, not a battlefield. Dinner was at 6. Warren had prepared roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Simple food. Comfort food. Hannah asked the boys if they'd help her set the table in the dining room. Not the kitchen island where they'd been eating all week. The formal dining room with the long walnut table and the chandelier that hadn't been used in months. Jerry hesitated. "We don't eat in there." "Why not?" Hannah asked. "Because Dad doesn't like it." Hannah looked at him gently. "Your father's not home yet. And this is your house too." Jerry considered that, then nodded. "Okay." They carried plates together. Hannah showed them how to arrange everything. Fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right. Napkin folded beside the plate. She didn't explain why, just showed them, and they copied her movements. Albert placed the glasses carefully, making sure they lined up. Noah folded napkins, actually concentrating, trying to get the corners right. Henry carried the salt and pepper shakers, one in each hand, walking slowly so he wouldn't drop them. When everything was ready, Hannah stood back and looked at the table. The boys stood with her, surveying their work. It wasn't perfect. Some forks were crooked. Some napkins were uneven. But it was theirs. They'd made it together. "Sit," Hannah said softly. The boys climbed into their chairs. Hannah brought the food from the kitchen, placing each dish in the center of the table. She served them one at a time, a scoop of potatoes, a piece of chicken, a small pile of green beans. Then she sat down at the end of the table, in the spot that used to belong to their mother. She folded her hands and bowed her head. The boys stared at her. Confused, uncertain. Hannah didn't demand anything, didn't tell them what to do. She just closed her eyes and spoke quietly. "Thank you for this food. Thank you for these boys. Thank you for today. Amen." It lasted maybe 10 seconds. No sermon, no long prayer. Just gratitude, simple and honest. When she opened her eyes, Jerry was watching her. "What was that?" "Saying thank you," Hannah said. "To who?" "To whoever's listening." Jerry frowned, but he didn't argue. He picked up his fork and started eating. The others followed. From the kitchen doorway, Warren stood frozen. He'd come to refill the water pitcher and stopped when he saw them. 4 boys sitting quietly. Hands that had been weapons now holding forks. Heads that had been bowed in something that looked like prayer. Ingrid appeared beside him, dish towel in hand. She saw it too. Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my," she whispered. Warren's eyes were wet. He turned away quickly, set the pitcher down, and walked back into the kitchen. Ingrid followed. When they were alone, Warren leaned against the counter and covered his face with his hands. "I didn't think I'd ever see that," he said, his voice breaking. Ingrid touched his shoulder. "Me neither." They stood there in silence, 2 people who'd worked in this house long enough to know what it used to be and what it had become. And now, maybe, what it could be again. Corinne came in to collect her coat, heading home for the night. She saw Warren and Ingrid standing there, both looking shaken. "What happened?" Go look in the dining room, Ingrid said quietly. Corinne walked to the doorway. Saw the boys eating. Saw Hannah sitting with them. Saw peace where there used to be war. She came back to the kitchen, her throat tight. How did she do that? She didn't do anything, Warren said. She just stayed. Word spread among the staff that night. Grayson heard it from Ingrid. Bud heard it from Grayson. By morning, everyone who worked in the Huffman house knew something had changed. The boys who'd terrorized 31 nannies were sitting at a table, eating quietly, heads bowed. Vincent didn't see it. He came home after 9, long after the boys were in bed. He walked through the house, noticed it was cleaner, quieter, but didn't think much of it. He was exhausted. Another day of deals and conference calls and pretending his life made sense. He stopped outside the boys' rooms. Listened. No crying. No fighting. Just silence. The kind that felt like rest, not fear. He found Hannah in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes by hand even though there was a dishwasher. She looked up when he entered. Mr. Huffman, how was your day? Long, he said. How were they? Good. We had dinner together. Vincent nodded. That's good. He wanted to ask more. Wanted to know what she'd done, how she'd managed, why his sons suddenly seemed human again. But he was afraid. Afraid that asking would break whatever fragile spell she'd cast. Afraid that acknowledging it would make it disappear. So he just said, "Thank you," and went upstairs. Friday, it happened again. Same table, same routine, plates aligned, boys waiting, Hannah's quiet prayer, 10 seconds of gratitude, then eating. Together. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. The ritual repeated, not because Hannah demanded it. Because the boys wanted it. They started setting the table without being asked. Started folding their hands before she did. Started whispering their own quiet thank yous. Stability formed. Not perfect, not permanent, but real. And somewhere in that long walnut dining room, beneath the chandelier that finally had a purpose again, something sacred took root in the ordinary. It started with whispers. Quiet conversations the boys had when they thought no one was listening. In the playroom after Hannah left to help Warren in the kitchen. In their shared bedroom late at night when the house had gone still. Behind closed doors that used to slam but now closed softly. Jerry was the first to say it out loud. What if she leaves? The question hung in the air like smoke. Noah stopped building his block tower. Albert looked up from his book. Henry's hands went still on the toy car he'd been rolling back and forth. She's not going to leave, Noah said, but his voice lacked conviction. Everyone leaves, Albert said quietly. Mom left. All the nannies left. Everyone. Jerry's jaw tightened. Then we make her stay. How? Noah asked. Jerry didn't answer right away. He was thinking, planning, the way he always did. We tell Dad we want her here. Not just for a few days. Forever. Albert frowned. What if he says no? Then we make him say yes. Over the next few days, they prepared. Jerry found paper in the study and brought it to the playroom. They drew pictures. Not the violent, angry scribbles they used to make. Real pictures. Hannah reading to them. Hannah folding laundry. Hannah sitting at the dinner table with her hands folded. They hid the drawings under Jerry's mattress, a secret collection of proof. They practiced what they'd say. Jerry wrote down words on a torn piece of notebook paper. We want Hannah to stay. Not as a nanny, as family. They took turns reading it, stumbling over the phrasing, arguing about what sounded right. Henry didn't contribute to the planning, but he listened. And when they weren't looking, he drew his own picture. Just Hannah's face, smiling. He folded it carefully and kept it in his pocket. The bonding continued. Every evening after dinner, Hannah would sit in the living room and read to them. Not children's books, though she had those too. Sometimes she read from her own book, the one she'd brought from Charleston. Stories about people who struggled and survived. About loss and hope. The boys didn't always understand, but they liked the sound of her voice. Steady, calm, safe. Noah started sitting closer, not right next to her at first. just nearby. Then, one evening, he leaned against the arm of the chair where she sat. She didn't make a big deal out of it. Just kept reading, her voice never faltering. Albert watched her hands while she read. The way she turned pages carefully. The way she traced lines with her finger when she wanted to remember something. He started doing the same thing with his own books. Gentle, intentional, and Henry, who still barely spoke, did something no one expected. During story time on Tuesday night, he walked over to Hannah's chair, climbed up beside her, and took her hand. Just held it, his small fingers wrapped around hers. Hannah's voice caught for just a second, then continued. She squeezed his hand gently. He didn't let go until the story ended. After she tucked them into bed that night and closed the door, the boys lay in the darkness and faced the truth they'd been avoiding. She could leave, any day, any moment. Vincent had never officially hired her, never given her a permanent position. She was still just a guest, a temporary fix, and temporary meant it could end. We have to tell him soon, Jerry whispered. When? Noah asked. Soon, Jerry repeated. Before it's too late. Wednesday afternoon, Hannah sat with them in the garden. It had rained earlier and the ground was still damp, but the boys didn't care. They sat on the stone bench beside her, watching her point out different flowers. She told them the names, showed them how to touch the petals gently so they wouldn't bruise. Why do you know so much about flowers? Albert asked. My mother taught me, Hannah said. She used to say that taking care of something small teaches you how to take care of something big. Like us? Henry whispered. Hannah looked at him, surprised. He so rarely spoke. Yes, sweetheart. Like you. Henry leaned into her side. Albert moved closer too. Even Noah, who always kept distance, scooted near enough that his shoulder brushed hers. Jerry stood a few feet away, watching, his expression unreadable. That night, after dinner, after prayers, after the boys were supposed to be asleep, Jerry gathered them in the hallway outside their rooms. He pulled the drawings from under his mattress and spread them on the floor. This is what we show him. This is why she has to stay. What if he doesn't care? Noah asked. He'll care, Jerry said firmly. He has to, but there was doubt in his voice. Because they all knew their father. Knew he was good at business, at making deals, at building empires. But not good at this. Not good at seeing what they needed. Not good at staying. Albert picked up one of the drawings. What if we're not enough? What if he picks work over us again? Jerry didn't have an answer for that. None of them did. Henry pulled the folded picture from his pocket. The one of Hannah's face. He smoothed it out on the floor next to the others. She makes it quiet, he said softly. Inside, the boys looked at him. At each other. At the drawings laid out like evidence. Like a case they were building. Like a plea they were preparing to make. Tomorrow, Jerry said. We tell him tomorrow. They gathered the drawings carefully, hid them again, and went to bed. But none of them slept easily. Because tomorrow meant risk. Tomorrow meant asking for something they desperately wanted and might not get. Tomorrow meant hoping. And hope, they'd learned, was the most dangerous thing of all. Vincent left New York at 3 in the afternoon. The meeting had ended early, a rare occurrence, and instead of staying in the city like he usually did, instead of finding another conference call to join or another contract to review, he got in his car and drove home. He didn't call ahead, didn't tell Grayson he was coming. Just drove north on I-95, windows down, mind somewhere else. He'd been thinking about the boys more lately. About Hannah, about the changes he'd seen in fragments. Cleaner rooms, quieter mornings. The way Jerry had said good morning to him yesterday without sarcasm. Small things, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. But Vincent was paying attention now. And it terrified him. He pulled into the driveway at 5:45. The house looked the same from the outside. Stone facade, manicured lawn, expensive and untouchable. But as he walked through the front door, something felt different. The air was lighter. The silence wasn't oppressive. It was calm. He set his briefcase down in the foyer. Listened. Heard voices coming from somewhere deeper in the house. The dining room, maybe. He walked toward the sound, his footsteps careful, almost hesitant. Like he was approaching something fragile that might shatter if he moved too fast. He reached the doorway and stopped. The dining room table was set. Plates arranged perfectly. Forks on the left, knives on the right. Napkins folded beside each plate. The chandelier above cast warm light across everything, making the room look like something from a life he used to have. Or maybe a life he'd never had at all. And there, at the table, were his sons. Jerry sat at the far end, back straight, hands resting in his lap. Noah beside him, still for once, not fidgeting or looking for something to break. Albert across from them, eyes down but peaceful. And Henry, the quietest, the most fragile, sitting with his small hands folded in front of him. Hannah stood near the table, placing the last dish in the center. She hadn't seen Vincent yet. She finished setting down the bowl of mashed potatoes, stepped back, and looked at the boys. Ready? They nodded. Hannah sat down at the head of the table, where Vincent's wife used to sit, where no one had sat in 3 years. She folded her hands, bowed her head. The boys did the same. Without prompting, without resistance. They just followed her, their movements synchronized, natural. Hannah spoke quietly. Thank you for this food. Thank you for this day. Thank you for these boys. Amen. Amen, the boys whispered. Then they waited, didn't grab for food, didn't shove each other, didn't yell or throw or demand. They just sat there, hands still folded, eyes on Hannah, waiting for her to tell them it was time. Hannah smiled. Okay, let's eat. The boys picked up their forks, started serving themselves, passing dishes, using quiet voices, acting like children who'd been loved their whole lives instead of children who'd spent 3 years trying to destroy everything around them. Vincent stood frozen in the doorway. His chest was tight, his throat closed, his hands shook. He tried to take a breath and couldn't. Tried to say something and no sound came out. This was his house, his table, his sons, but he didn't recognize any of it. Because for 3 years, this room had been a graveyard. A place where grief sat and rotted. Where silence meant fear, not peace. Where every meal ended in tears or broken dishes or someone storming out. But now, there was no fear. No anger. No chaos. Just 4 boys sitting together. Eating. Existing. Safe. Vincent had bought everything for them. Expensive schools they didn't attend. Toys they didn't play with. Therapists they didn't trust. Nannies they didn't respect. He'd thrown money at the problem like money could heal trauma. Like wealth could replace presence. Like a check could buy back what grief had stolen. But Hannah hadn't bought anything. She'd just stayed, sat on floors, cried in hallways, folded laundry, made pancakes, prayed quietly, loved them without conditions, and somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. Vincent's vision blurred. He blinked hard, trying to clear it, but the tears came anyway. Silent, unwelcome, he pressed his hand against the doorframe to steady himself. His sons, his broken, beautiful sons. They were healing, right in front of him. And he hadn't done a single thing to make it happen. Jerry looked up and saw him. Dad. The other boys turned. Their expressions shifted. Not fear, not anger, just surprise. You're home early, Jerry said. Vincent tried to speak, opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He swallowed hard, tried again. His voice came out rough, barely audible. I didn't mean to interrupt. Hannah stood. You're not interrupting, Mr. Huffman. Please, join us. She gestured to the empty chair. The one at the opposite end of the table. The one Vincent used to sit in before he stopped eating with his family altogether. Vincent walked forward slowly, pulled out the chair, sat down. His sons stared at him like he was a stranger they were trying to remember. Maybe he was. Hannah placed a plate in front of him. Served him food without asking if he wanted it. Chicken, potatoes, green beans. Simple, ordinary, The kind of meal families shared. She sat back down, folded her hands again. Vincent watched his sons do the same. Watched them bow their heads. Watched Hannah close her eyes and speak. "Thank you for bringing Mr. Huffman home safely. Thank you for this time together." "Amen." The boys echoed, "Amen." Vincent's hands were shaking. He folded them tightly to stop the trembling. Looked around the table at the faces of his children. Really looked, and saw something he thought was gone forever. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet, but peace. The kind that comes after a long war when the fighting finally stops and everyone realizes they're still alive. Henry looked at him from across the table. Small, fragile, but not broken anymore. He smiled, just a little, and whispered, "Hi, Daddy." Vincent's throat closed completely. He couldn't answer, couldn't move, couldn't do anything except sit there and let the weight of 3 years crash over him all at once. Hannah's voice was soft. "It's okay, Mr. Huffman. You don't have to say anything. Just be here." So he was. He sat. He ate. He listened to his sons talk quietly about their day. And for the first time since his wife walked out, since his life fell apart, since hope became something he couldn't afford to feel, Vincent Huffman let himself cry. After dinner, after the plates were cleared and the dishes washed, after the boys had brushed their teeth and changed into pajamas, Jerry knocked on the door to Vincent's study. Vincent looked up from his laptop, surprised. It was almost 8:30. The boys were usually in bed by now. "Can we talk to you?" Jerry asked. Vincent closed the laptop. "Of course. Come in." The door opened wider. All 4 boys filed in. Jerry first, carrying something tucked under his arm. Noah behind him, hands in his pockets. Albert next, nervous, and Henry at the end, holding something small in his hand. They stood in a line in front of Vincent's desk. Like they'd rehearsed this. Maybe they had. "What's going on?" Vincent asked gently. Jerry glanced at his brothers, then back at Vincent. "We need to tell you something." "Okay." Jerry set the papers he'd been carrying on the desk. They were drawings, crayon and pencil sketches on notebook paper. Hannah reading to them. Hannah at the dinner table. Hannah in the garden. Hannah folding laundry. Each one carefully drawn, signed at the bottom with their names. Vincent picked one up, looked at it. His throat tightened. "We made these," Jerry said, "because we want you to understand." "Understand what?" Jerry took a breath. "We want Hannah to stay. Not just for a week or a month. We want her to stay forever." Vincent set the drawing down carefully. "Forever is a long time." "We know," Albert said quietly. "But everyone else leaves. And we don't want her to leave." Noah stepped forward. "She's different. She doesn't yell at us. She doesn't give up. She just stays." Henry walked around the desk. He was holding the folded picture he'd drawn, the one of Hannah's face. He handed it to Vincent without saying anything. Vincent unfolded it slowly, saw the careful lines, the smile, the detail Henry had put into something so small. Vincent's chest ached. He looked at his sons, really looked at them, and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Clarity, hope, a choice they'd made together. "Where's Hannah now?" Vincent asked. "In the kitchen," Jerry said. "We told her we wanted to talk to you alone first." Vincent nodded. "Stay here." He walked to the kitchen. Found Hannah drying the last of the pots, setting them back on the shelf where they belonged. She turned when she heard him enter. "Mr. Huffman, is everything all right? The boys just talked to me." Hannah set the dish towel down. "Oh, they want you to stay. Permanently." Hannah's expression didn't change. She didn't smile or look relieved or celebrate. She just nodded slowly. "I see." Vincent studied her. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," she said quietly. "They've been talking about it for days. I heard them whispering. I just didn't know if they'd have the courage to ask." "And what do you want?" Hannah looked at him directly. "I want what's best for them. That's not what I asked." Hannah folded her arms, not defensively, just thoughtfully. "Mr. Huffman, I came here for 3 days. Those 3 days are over. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. If you want me to stay, I'll stay. But this isn't about what I want. It's about what they need. And what you're willing to give them. Vincent leaned against the counter. I've given them everything. Hannah shook her head gently. You've given them money. Things. That's not the same. The words stung, but Vincent didn't argue. Because she was right. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to be what they need. Then learn, Hannah said. I'm not here to replace you, Mr. Huffman. I'm here to help. But they need their father. Not your wallet. You. Vincent closed his eyes. This was the hardest decision he'd ever faced. Harder than any deal he'd closed. Harder than any contract he'd signed. Because this wasn't business. This was life. His sons. His family. The thing he'd spent 3 years running from. He opened his eyes. What would staying look like? For you? Hannah considered. A room. Fair pay. Time off when needed. But mostly, just being part of their lives. Eating with them. Reading with them. Helping them heal. And me? Hannah met his gaze. You'd have to be here too. Really here. Not just physically. Emotionally. They need to know you're not going to disappear again. Vincent swallowed hard. I don't know if I can do that. Hannah's voice was firm but kind. Then you need to decide, Mr. Huffman. Because those boys just put their hearts on your desk. And you can either honor that or break it. But you can't do both. Vincent stood there for a long moment. Thinking, weighing, calculating like he always did. But this wasn't something you could calculate. This was faith, trust, hope, all the things money couldn't buy. He nodded. Stay, please. Hannah's expression softened. Are you sure? No, Vincent said honestly. But they are, and maybe that's enough. They walked back to the study together. The boys were still standing there, waiting, tension written across their faces. Jerry looked up when Vincent entered. Well? Vincent sat down at his desk. Looked at the drawings spread across the surface. Looked at his sons. 4 boys who'd been hurt so deeply they'd learned to hurt others first. 4 boys who were finally, slowly, learning to trust again. She's staying, Vincent said. Jerry's face crumpled. Relief poured out of him so fast he couldn't hide it. Really? Really? Noah let out a breath he'd been holding. Albert smiled, a real smile. And Henry ran to Hannah, wrapping his arms around her waist. She knelt down and hugged him back, her eyes wet. Thank you, Jerry whispered. Vincent shook his head. Don't thank me. I should have done this a long time ago. Over the next weeks, the house changed. Laughter returned, not all at once, but in pieces. A joke at breakfast, a giggle during story time. The sound of boys playing instead of destroying. Vincent came home earlier, ate dinner with them, listened to Hannah read, learned how to fold napkins, learned how to pray, learned how to sit in silence without running from it. Healing began, not perfectly. There were still hard days. Still moments when the boys tested boundaries or when grief resurfaced. But they faced it together now. As a family. One evening, Vincent stood in the hallway looking at the photographs lining the walls. School pictures, portraits, moments frozen in time. They didn't look like ghosts anymore. They looked like memories, like proof that life continued even after loss. Hannah appeared beside him. They're good boys, she said softly. Vincent nodded. They are. Because of you. Hannah shook her head. Because of us. You showed up, Mr. Huffman. That's what mattered. From the dining room came the sound of the boys setting the table. Plates clinking. Quiet voices. The ordinary sounds of a family preparing to eat together. Vincent closed his eyes and listened. Peace. Not purchased. Earned. By staying. By trying. By choosing love over fear. The house exhaled. And finally, after 3 long years, it felt like home again.